Hello guys, welcome to a brand new video, and this is going to be my first news video in a little bit. And by a little bit, I mean like 11 months. But a ton of things have happened since I last uploaded. So, first of all, the 2023 election happened. And I'm not gonna lie, we weren't that off. I don't mean to brag, but we pretty much got everything right. Not gonna lie. But yeah, like, we weren't that off. So I am not complaining personally. That's my little pat on the back, I should say. But that's not that uncommon for this election. Honestly, it was pretty boring, and most people got it fairly right on who would win. It wasn't that crazy like in 2022 or 2016, where absolutely everybody was wrong. It wasn't like that crazy this election. But maybe that's a good thing. So first, the first two elections I'm going to go over are the referendums that happened in Ohio. There was one on abortion and there was one on marijuana. Both of them won by a very sizable margin, like 16 to 17 points. And this shows how popular each of these are. We're talking about an R+8 state of Ohio, where even when Democrats had their best possible candidate, they only got to R+6, which was last year. But this shows that even in a, kind of Republican state like Ohio, issues like abortion and marijuana legalization are still very in the pro camp, I guess. So this shows that the issues of marijuana legalization and the access to abortion are very popular among Americans, even those that tend to lean towards the right. I can assure you that, given Ohio's political leanings, a lot of Republicans voted yes on both of these amendments. One thing that I did kind of find interesting was marijuana actually beat out the right to abortion, which is kind of surprising, honestly. I thought abortion would win out, but yeah. So Ohio is legalized recreationally or marijuana is legalized recreationally in Ohio, and abortion is guaranteed in Ohio. Next election. I'm not going to go over the Pennsylvania Supreme Court because I, to be honest, forgot to cover it. So I am going to next do the Kentucky governor election. This was very on point, I guess, as to what we expected. Andy Beshear won by exactly 5 points, which, like I said, is pretty common among predictions. This isn't that big of a surprise. And this, as well as the Mississippi governor election, show that incumbency is very key in 2023, especially among statewide races. And it also shows that split ticket voting is still common. The only way Andy Beshear could have possibly won this election is for split ticket voting, because Kentucky is a very Republican state. And the same thing for Mississippi. It was only so close because tons of Republicans voted for Presley. Does this mean that there will be tons of split ticket voting in 2024 for places like Montana and Ohio in the Senate races? Not necessarily, though, because governor races are very, very different from races like, Senate races. Because, let's be real here, Andy Beshear can't do much. Even though he's a Democrat, he can't really do much to, move the state towards the left. if you get what I'm saying. Like, both houses in Kentucky, in the state legislature, the Republicans have supermajorities. Andy Beshear can veto something, and it'll just be overridden. So people are more willing to vote for someone who they may like as a person, but they might not agree with policy-wise because they cannot do anything to like move the state towards whatever agenda they don't like. So I don't think this really determines or really shows how much split ticket voting is still common in America, I guess. But it is kind of positive towards the lack of polarization in at least governor races. And then Mississippi governor, pretty much same thing. It was close, but not that close. It was only like 4 points. So Tate Reeves will win another term. But again, it shows there was tons of split ticket voting for Presley to win, because if you go to the down ballot races, every single one of these is voting for the Republicans by the standard margin you'd expect for Mississippi. However, for the governor election, it is so close, mainly because of candidate quality. We saw this last election in states like Arizona, where candidates like Carrie Lake and Blake Masters did poorly because they were so against the norm, I guess. They were so far right. And voters didn't like that. So it kind of showed then how polarization didn't sway voters to just blindly vote for them. They considered candidate quality. And this has been shown again. In every other race for Mississippi, Republicans won by standard margins because these were fairly normal candidates. But voters took into account the likability of Brandon Presley and what Tate Reeves has done, his scandals and what have you. So they really took into account candidate quality. And it shows that, again, polarization isn't as bad in America as you might believe. Finally, the Virginia state legislature elections. This was already predicted to go to Democrats, but it really is a good sign for them. This was the only race where it wasn't really predetermined, and you can't just attribute it to state. You can't just attribute it to being a governor race, so people might, split ticket vote. These two elections really determined the future of Glenn Youngkin's legislation efforts in the state of Virginia, and yeah, it has been stopped. The House of Delegates has flipped. The Democrat Party is now in control of Virginia's House of Delegates. They're still in control of the state Senate. So this really shows, Democrats did do pretty well this election. It's pretty hard to tell because most of the elections were governor races. Most of the big races were governor races. So it's kind of hard to tell, given how weird governor races can be sometimes. But these are elections that will determine the future of the state of Virginia. And Virginia flipped. So this does kind of show, and a lot of people did predict for the House of Delegates to remain Republican. So this does kind of show that Tuesday night was a pretty good night for the Democratic Party. Even if they lost Mississippi, let's be real, that was a long shot. That's an incumbent Republican governor in the state of Mississippi. That was pretty much guaranteed to go Republican. This, however, It could have gone either way, but the Democrats pulled it off. And they could even win 52 seats. We don't know. There's one race that hasn't been called. It is the 82nd for the Virginia House of Delegates, and it is very close. But it could become even more in favor of Democrats in the House of Delegates. So this does show Democrats had a pretty good night. All right, our next piece of news. Aside from Grand Theft Auto 6 being announced, Joe Manchin has officially announced that he will not be running for re-election in 2024, which is pretty crazy. I did not expect this, but yeah, it appears he probably just saw that he probably wouldn't have won, especially after Jim Justice decided to run. So this pretty much guarantees that Republicans are going to win West Virginia in 2024. It was a fairly competitive race, kind of, but Manchin was pretty much DOA, and this basically confirms it. So I'm mainly going to cover what this means for Manchin's political career going forward, less what this means for like his legislative career, I guess. Although I will say he might start to lean more to the left now, since he doesn't have to worry about re-election. But his main thing that he said was, which you can see on the headline right here, "I will not seek re-election. I will fight to unite the middle." This feels like a teaser or something. Like, what do you mean, unite the middle? Is he going to run for the governor office, which I could see him doing? He's allowed to. Like, he was governor of West Virginia, but he could be governor again, and he'd do pretty well. Like I said, governor elections, like I said earlier for Kentucky and Mississippi, governor elections are less polarized. People are less partisan. So he could seriously win. He's fairly popular in West Virginia. He and Jim Justice could literally like swap spots, which would be pretty funny. Or he could, which a lot of people are talking about, run as a third, or I guess in this situation, fourth party in the presidential race. He will fight to unite the middle. People are saying he'll maybe run under the No Labels Party, maybe run as an independent. It's possible he could run, but I wouldn't count on it. There's already an independent candidate running who's gaining some traction, RFK Jr., so I don't really think he needs to run. But he could. He seriously could. And that would probably do much more harm to Joe Biden than I think RFK does. So yeah, for now, I'm just gonna say that this completely demolishes any chance of the Democratic Party retaining control in West Virginia's Senate seat, like completely. And we'll just have to be patient for now as to what this means for Joe Manchin's political career going forward. He could run for the governorship, he could run for president, we just don't know. And our final piece of news is the third Republican presidential debate happened. And some things were said, some people were trashed, and I want to go over what this could mean for the party. Here I have the polls as to what has been going on for the party's nomination, and there isn't any polls so far post GOP debate because it was fairly recent, but I just want to quickly go over how the Republican nomination has been looking beforehand. So it was fairly close between DeSantis and Trump, and then DeSantis started his campaign, and well, he kind of goofed. So DeSantis is starting to fall amongst all the other candidates, and Trump has been pretty much holding on at like 55 to 60%, depending on the day. And we've kind of seen that in the debate where DeSantis didn't do all that well, so he kind of continued where he was already. The two main standouts of the debate were Nikki Haley and Vivek Ramaswamy. But overall, like, they were clashing the entire debate. Ramaswamy called her like Dick Cheney in, 3 Inch Heels? So, some things were said. But overall, I think Nikki Haley came up on top in the debate. She fought accusations quite well, and she kind of made herself more distinct from a lot of the other candidates with a lot of the policies she was more for. She was one of the candidates who was more for Ukraine aid, while a lot of others, including Ramaswamy, were advocating for less. So she made herself very distinct. And I think this could seriously help her. So what does this mean for the future of the presidential primary? I think Trump has it in the bag. I'm going to be real. He's definitely going to win. He might win every state, honestly. But for the lesser candidates, I think they're going to start to coalesce. We've already seen that with Mike Pence, Francis Suarez, and Hurd dropping out. And I think we might start to see this continue. I think Asa Hutchinson is going to drop out. I think Tim Scott might even drop out. I mean, they're on the debate stage. They seem like they are doing well in polling, but Tim Scott's only at 2.2%. I think Chris Christie's going to tough it out until the RNC, but like, Tim Scott's only at 2.2%. I think he's going to drop out as well. I think a lot of these people are going to rally behind Nikki Haley, and I think eventually she is going to overtake DeSantis in polling. Even in recent polling, we've seen that she's either tied with DeSantis in terms of support and doing better against Trump one-on-one than DeSantis, or she's only slightly behind. And I think this could bode well for Republicans. I think, honestly, she's the only Republican who would beat Biden in an election. Like, honestly. So I think they're going to start to coalesce behind her. And she might get up to, like, 20-25%. If Trump gets convicted under, like, any charge, she's going to boost up. And I don't think she'd win the nomination, but she would get a boost. I think her ceiling is, like, 30%. If everyone is like coalescing behind her and uniting behind her, I think her ceiling's 30%. So she could win a few states, but I think no matter what happens, Trump's gonna win the nomination. It's pretty much guaranteed. I don't want to like completely say that she's done. She might. She certainly could win, she certainly could win, but I don't think it's necessarily that likely. But I think the more likely thing, the more likely possibility is that Republicans rally behind her, and she becomes the second place candidate. And I think she could even come second place in Iowa, for example. If we look at Iowa's polling, she got a massive boost recently, and I think that's going to continue again from the recent debate performance. I think she's going to overtake DeSantis, and she's going to come second place in Iowa. But none of this is really going to impact the nomination. I think it's going to be Trump, like, definitely, unless he gets convicted on a criminal charge, then it could be someone else, but I really don't see it. So overall, Nikki Haley did well in the debate. It was mainly between her and Ramaswamy. DeSantis kind of like stood in the corner and said nothing. And I think Republicans are going to unite behind her instead of DeSantis, and she might come second place in Iowa. But I think the most she can do is like maybe 30% until Trump wins the nomination. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. My next video is going to be a prediction for the presidential election, assuming that Trump is the nominee. And yeah, so go ahead in the comments, tell me something, tell me some maybe predictions you want to hear about like maybe presidential races that you want to see me cover. And yeah, I'm also going to be doing an update to my Senate predictions after everything that's been happening. And so yeah, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. Oh, also subscribe or I will kill your Minecraft dog.